Okay. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our series on navigating the business sale process. In today's session, we'll be diving into one of the most critical documents in any sales transaction, and that is the sale and purchase agreement. That might be, of course, a share purchase agreement if you're buying the shares of a business, or an asset purchase agreement. But essentially, the documents are very similar. It's just what you're buying, which is detailed inside, that would be different. I'll call it an SPA just rather than saying the sales and purchase agreement as we go through this presentation this morning. But the SPA is a legally binding document, and it's a contract that outlines the terms and conditions of the sale, which will include the purchase price, the payment terms, and any contingencies or warranties, or any other conditions that might have to be met before the sale is closed. Now, that might seem long and complicated, and in fact, the SPA documents tend to be 60 to so I've seen several hundred pages. So they are meaty documents, and this is probably going to be the most expensive side of your transaction from a legal perspective. But they are really essential, and it's really important to make sure when you're selling your business that you get your SPA right. So although I have copies of SPAs and some people go it alone, I would strongly suggest using a good solicitor. If you don't have a good solicitor, I've got a couple that I've used many times that are absolutely brilliant, and can actually save you a bit of cost in this area. So the SPA is essentially a roadmap for the entire transaction, and it's crucial that both the buyer and yourselves fully understand and agree to the terms and the contents that are in it. So it can take months to negotiate an SPA, but as long as you're 100% clear on what you need and you've got the right solicitor, it can take weeks instead, a couple of weeks. Some of the key components that you'll find in an SPA, and I've got a couple of one pages on this which provide more detail, but as a quick overview, you'll have the purchase price. So that is the price that you will agree, not when you sign the heads of terms, but once you've completed the due diligence. So this is the final purchase price, and also the payment terms. So you may decide that you want to have all your money up front, or you might have some level of deferred consideration or earn out. All of that will be included in the sale and purchase agreement. Earn out and also contingent payments. So if you've sold your business on the fact that it's going to increase by 10% next year in profit, then that will be included in within that contract. The SPA also includes a detailed description of all of the assets and liabilities that are being transferred as part of the sale. So, for example, sometimes a buyer thinks they might get some of the company cars, but unless they're actually detailed within the SPA, they won't get those. It also includes representations and warranties from both the buyer and the seller. So this is to support the transaction and de-risk it from both sides. So your representations and warranties might be to secure the future success of the business, or make the payments contingent on a particular growth of the business. Or it might be as simple as protecting it. If you've said you're selling your business with several contracts that are in place, and those contracts can be moved to the new owner, a warranty covers in case they don't do that, so it supports the buyer on that. The other thing that's normally in the SPA, because it's so many pages, is the indemnification provisions, which allocate this risk and liability between the parties. One of the other things that I think is incredibly important as a seller to ensure is properly in there is non-compete and non-solicitation clauses. The buyer will insist that these are in there, so that you can't go off and set up the same business locally within a certain set time period, and poach the customers that you had beforehand or the employees. So it's really essential that you get this right, depending on what you want to do as the next step after you've sold your business. The buyer will try to protect their assets and try to ensure that you don't nick customers and you don't nick staff. You're unlikely to do that. So this is a really important clause that's within the SPA. But one thing that's really important to say is, as I explained, sometimes the SPA will be 60 pages, sometimes it'll be several hundred pages. There isn't a one size fits all document, although I do have a template for this on the Sales Success Circle, which you can access. You just remember every single transaction is unique. So the specific terms and conditions on your SPA will depend on a variety of factors, including the size of your business, the complexity of it, the industry in which it operates. Obviously, it's going to be much more complex if you're in an industry where there's a high level of IP, like a tech industry. And it also, the SPA will vary depending on the goals and priorities of both yourself and your buyer. So you might want to exit that your business as soon as possible. The buyer might want you to stay for 3 years to protect the growth of the business. So it's really important that these are all detailed in your SPA document. So I wanted to give you an example, like I do normally on each of these slides, of Sarah, who sold her e-commerce business last year to a large retailer. So one of the challenges she had within that transaction was negotiating the representations and warranties in the SPA. This is because Sarah had built her business from the ground up and was really familiar with its operations, but the buyer wanted extensive warranties to cover everything from the condition of the inventory to the accuracy of the financial statements. This is kind of pretty normal. It's really trying to de-risk it from a buyer's perspective. And if the buyer is using some form of finance to buy your business, it's often the financer company that will be looking for this as well. So it's a normal thing to ask for. So Sarah worked closely with her solicitor, and he was able to negotiate a set of representations and warranties that accurately reflected the state of her business, but she also provided the buyer with the insurances and their financer, that the insurances they needed to move on with the transaction. So the solicitor got a really well drafted SPA, and it gave both of the parties the confidence in terms of the deal and helped to ensure a smooth closing process. So again, takes a little bit of negotiation. There's quite a lot of backwards and forwards with SPA, and it's probably one of the most painful parts of the transaction, but you just got to have the right legal support to make it a lot easier. So who should you be working with and what should they be doing? It's really important to get the right person to help negotiate and finalise this critical document. So the first thing to do is to find a really good, experienced solicitor who can guide you through the process and ensure that your interests are protected. So I come across a lot of sellers who have a family solicitor who they try to use for this type of process. And I would say that that's not necessarily the right way to go about it. It's really important to try and have somebody who's experienced in drawing up SPAs, and it's not normally a family solicitor. So with the Sales Success Circle, we have a whole list of people who we recommend, who are really good solicitors who've been through the buying process on multiple occasions, normally and a couple of hundred times. So they're really good at being able to represent you really well. They have to work really closely with you throughout this whole process to understand your goals and your priorities, and they'll use that information to draft the initial version of the SPA that they will then send to the buyers and the buyer solicitor. From here, this is where it gets interesting, and this is where the negotiation begins. Your legal advisors will work with the buyer's solicitor to hash out the details of the agreement, including any specific terms and conditions to govern your transaction of your sale. This can be really complex and time consuming, so you've got to try and be patient on this and persistent. And I would say that I've been through over 70 acquisitions, M&A processes, and as I say, this is the most tricky time. You've got to be really patient with it, but you've really got to make sure that there's a momentum that's carried on. So I would suggest you have a meeting once a week, as a minimum, a telephone meeting between yourself and your buyer, and involve the solicitors and have a list of anything that concerns you and try and resolve those at the time. It really speeds up the whole process. You've got to make sure that you maintain your open and effective communication with your solicitor. And yeah, if you don't understand any of the key issues at stake, they are there to provide really clear guidance on your priorities and concerns. And so it's really important that you have somebody who's used to going through the M&A process, because they know how to cut. I'm sorry, but they know how to cut out the crap. They'll be able to speed through it a lot quicker, and they'll be able to push you with the right questions so that you get the SPA that's absolutely right for you in terms of the level of risk you want to be involved with and your exit process. But just remember to be open to the advice and feedback that you get from your solicitor, because that can really help to navigate tricky legal situations. And they'll also be really experienced at creating solutions that chat to any challenges that arise. Ultimately, the whole goal of the negotiation process and the SPA is to arrive at a mutually agreeable contract that protects the interests of both parties, and sets the stage for a successful closing and transition. I think this is really important because selling your business is an emotional thing. So you want to get the framework and the structure in place, because when it actually comes to closing and transitioning, it can be quite difficult because of the emotional connections you've had with your business over the years. So it really helps. The SPA is a good way to remain objective, and ensure that you have a really favourable outcome, and you can move forward with confidence, knowing that your business is being sold in the way that you want it to. So I'll give an example of Michael, who I work with. He recently was lucky enough to sell his business, which is a manufacturing business, to a private equity company. One of the key sticking points, just bear in mind, if you do sell to private equity, they've got solicitors that have done hundreds and hundreds of transactions, and they know all the tricks in the book. So it's really important that you have the right person on your side when it comes to that. One of the sticking points that Michael had with his solicitor on the SPA negotiation was indemnification clause. And that was, in this case, the indemnification outlined the seller's liabilities for breaches of representations and warranties, i.e., any breaches in what Michael had said he was going to sell as opposed to what they may receive. This is quite normal. And what the buyer wanted, the PE company, was a lengthy indemnification period and a high liability cap if the things that Michael said, including all his contracts that he had with his customers, if they weren't right. This would have left Michael on the hook for potential issues long after the sale closed. And one of the things I'm really certain about after working with so many companies over the years is it's a difficult process when you sell your company. You want to go off and enjoy the fruits of your labour and the money that is being brought in to go and enjoy yourself, or go and start up another business. You don't want a shackle around your neck holding you back. So it's really nice to have, it's important that indemnification processes are in place, but the shorter they can be, the easier it is for you post transaction. So Michael worked with his solicitors and negotiated a more reasonable indemnification clause that limited his liability and also gave him peace of mind about the future of the business, because it was for a shorter period of time. So it was quite a lot of backwards and forwards, but Michael was able to navigate a complex negotiating process, and he arrived at an SPA that he was really comfortable with. It met all of his needs, and it positioned him for a successful post-sale transition that he wouldn't have to do for years and years to come. I think in the end, most of the liabilities were for about a year, which is pretty normal. So what do you have to do then when it comes to post-closing obligations? Well, when you sign off your SPA, and the signing of the SPA is a massive thing, because you've had a lot of negotiation backwards and forwards between yourself, your buyer, and your legal teams. And then that leads to the closing of the sale. It's kind of the last thing that needs to be done before your sale can close. So they are definitely milestones to celebrate, but unfortunately, the work doesn't end there. In fact, the post-closing period can be almost as critical as the lead up to your actual sale. So you really have to make sure that you have a plan in place for addressing any ongoing obligations, liabilities, or considerations. So the buck doesn't stop at the SPA. It's about what's in the SPA and how you have to act on that afterwards. One of the key areas that I think you really need to focus on is the transaction of your key contracts and relationships. Of course, depending on the nature of your business, this might be something like important customer contracts where the sales are based from. It might be supplier agreements where you might have negotiated fantastic deals with suppliers, and it's important to try and keep those on board. But there are also other crucial relationships that need to be transferred to the new owner of your business. So it's really important for you to work closely with your buyer and ensure a smooth transition to minimize any disruption to your business. Because if you are doing any form of deferred consideration or earn-out, a disruption to your business may mean it won't perform as well, and it may mean that you get less money for your transaction, for your business sale. So working together with your buyer, making sure that those contracts are moved over smoothly, and that they form a good relationship with your customers, your suppliers, is really important. Another really important consideration post-closure will be the transfer of your intellectual property and other proprietary assets, if you have them. Most companies do have some level of intellectual property, and we've covered in previous talks about how to make sure that those are protected. So IP might include anything from patents and trademarks, but it's not as even as that extent. You can say your IP is your customer lists and any trade secrets that you have, any particular secret sauce that you have with your approach to your business. It's critical that you ensure that these assets are properly transferred and protected, and that the seller isn't inadvertently retaining any right. So the buyer will want to make sure that you don't inadvertently retain any rights or obligations related to them. I had a perfect example of that. When Jo Malone sold her a perfume, a scent business to a private equity company, they didn't do that. So she was actually able to use her name afterwards, because it wasn't covered as part of that process. So your buyer will be looking to make sure that they get everything transferred across. And that's why it takes so long to do your SPA. One of the other things which I'm all about hearts and minds, and all about people. So we've covered this previously, but your sales transaction is going to be challenging for your team, but your buyer is going to want to normally want to really work closely with your team, because they'll be the ones who'll be able to keep the business going when you've left. So employee retention and transition is a really important post-closing consideration, and your role as seller is really important in that. Depending on the terms of your SPA that you've signed off, you might have ongoing obligations related to employee benefits, severance, or other matters. So it's really important that you work closely with the buyer to ensure a smooth transition for employees and minimize any potential liabilities and challenges. So that might be a pay rise that you've agreed with them, or a share scheme that you've agreed with them. It's just really important to make sure that those are in place, because with the transfer of obligations under TUPE, you want to make sure they're your employees are legally protected, so it's important to ensure that anything that promised is included as part of your SPA. Finally, it's also important to have a plan in place to address any post-closing disputes or issues that might arise. So this might be anything from capital adjustments to indemnification claims related to breaches of any of the representations and warranties that are in your SPA. So one of the most tricky things I find for buyers, for sellers when they sell their business with some level of deferred consideration, is they never seem to be happy with the amount of deferred consideration that they get. These are really important. If you're not getting your full amount of money up front, which is really unusual to get, then you really need to make sure that your solicitor is crystal clear in terms of what is included on your deferred consideration. If you've got if your deferred consideration or your earnout is based on hitting a particular profit target, you have to really define closely what that profit is. And what's included in the profit and what's not in terms of things like amortization and depreciation. You've got to be proactive in addressing these issues to maintain open communication with your buyers. And this really helps you as the seller to minimize post-closing liabilities and ensure a successful transaction. So what does that theory look like in practice? I wanted to use the example of Lisa. So when she sold her business, she worked closely with the buyers team to introduce them to key customers. So she had meetings with each of her key customers with the new owner of the business. She also provided training on her company's proprietary software, and she ensured a seamless transition of ongoing projects because obviously they were the ones that were going to make money for the business going forward. So by taking a proactive and collaborative approach, Lisa was able to minimize any disruption to the business to ensure a successful post-closing transition. She had quite a lot of money tied up with an earnout as well, so it really helped to ensure that the business continued to not only go about its business successfully, but actually to grow at the same time, which meant that she actually got an upside on her earnout. The other thing that Lisa did was she worked closely with her solicitor to address some post-closing issues that arose. This is quite normal. The buyer will always find things that they weren't expecting. So expect to have this for the first few months, one or two things that come up. One of the disputes that came up for Lisa was a calculation of over the calculation of the working capital, and a question on the transfer of certain intellectual property rights. So working really closely with her solicitor and working collaboratively with the buyer, which is one of the best things to do, Lisa was able to resolve these issues quickly, and she was able to get the working capital calculation as she wanted it, which meant she ended up getting quite a lot more money. As the issues were resolved really quickly, it continued the trust, and she actually walked away with from a business happily. So I think that's really important. It's trying to understand. It's very difficult when you've been working with your business and you've run your business for 20 odd years to know everything that people don't know, but it's important to include as much as possible on your sales and purchase agreement. So now we're getting to the closing, which is the exciting bit. It's the culmination of all the hard work and preparation that goes into your business sale. And that's not obviously just the case through the due diligence process and the SPA. That's all the time that's led up to you preparing your business for sale. It's a time of a real excitement and anticipation, but until the money is transferred and until your obligations are met, there's still at a time of stress and uncertainty. So what I would say after doing over 70 transactions is it's really important to have a plan in place to ensure a smooth and successful closing. One of the things that I would suggest is that you really work closely with your solicitor and your accountant to prepare a comprehensive closing checklist. On the sales support site, we have got a closing checklist, but it has to be tailored to your own particular business. And it's useful to get the people in the know to help with that. So what you need to make sure you have in your checklist is things like your documents and deliverables that will be required at the time of closing. And this is when you go and sit in one office and you actually sign the documents on the closing day. This will be things like an executed SPA, any necessary third-party consents or approvals, and that might be a novation of contracts to your buyer, or that might be things like leaseholds on property. And you also need to, on your checklist, have evidence of the transfer of all of your assets and liabilities that have been agreed in your sales and purchase agreement. So in order to make that smooth as possible, I normally would suggest having that in the data room. So it's a shared one. You can see who's been accessing, who's looked at it, and people can add and have it as a collaborative document. It's a way to maintain open and effective communication with your buyer leading up to closing. And as I've said previously and on this call, communication. Make sure that you have at least one open call every single week through your transaction period as a regular check-in to ensure all necessary documents and deliverables are on track, as well as proactive outreach to address any potential issues or roadblocks that might arise. There always seems to be, in every transaction, something that's found at the last minute that needs an extra bit of negotiation. That's pretty normal, as comprehensive as you try to be. Another important strategy I find on closing is to ensure all the necessary funds are in place and ready to be transferred at closing. Obviously, you will be the one who will be receiving those funds if you're selling your business. But it's really important to make sure that those are all ready to transfer. This can include working with your accountant to set up any necessary escrow accounts or wire transfer. So sometimes if monies aren't going to be, if you're not going to receive the full amount at the beginning of on the day of the purchase, the buyer will you can be protected to make sure you get your extra money by insisting that the buyer puts the money in escrow, which is effectively a protected account that they can't touch. So it's a ring-fenced amount of money to make sure that you don't end up with them only paying you half the amount for that. I would say the last thing it's really important to do is, well, obviously, it's been a long process, so you want to celebrate the successful completion of your sale. I like to have some way to celebrate, and normally, what I'll do is organise a nice dinner out where we take your team, so your key people within your business, and your legal and financial teams, the accountant and solicitor, out for a nice meal, or give them a small gift. And it's a great time to sort of reflect on all the hard work that people have put in, because you can't sell your business on your own. You need your team around you to do that. So John was a serial entrepreneur that I've had been lucky enough to work with. So he had just sold was just in the process of selling his third business, because he was a bit of he likes to do a lot of that. And so he worked closely with his accountant and solicitor and their teams to ensure all necessary documents and deliverables were in order. He was pretty good at it on his third sale. He also had regular communication with the buyers team, and he actually did it several times a week, and he proactively addressed any issues and concerns that they had. But on the actual day of closing, John and his team, his key team members, small members, they went to the buyer's office, which is pretty normal, with all the necessary documents and funds in hand. And through their preparation and effective communication, the closing process went really smoothly, and all the people within that room were really happy. So to celebrate the successful sale, John took his immediate team and his advisors out to a nice dinner at a posh restaurant. They raised their glasses, and John took a moment, he said, to reflect on the hard work and dedication that had gone in. He made a really nice speech and thanked everyone for their help and support with that. And obviously, because it was John, he then his thoughts turned to his next business, because he was just on a roll by then after selling 3 businesses. So now we've covered the key strategies for navigating the SPA and ensuring smooth closing. I wanted to take a moment to address any questions or concerns any of you may have. Peter, have you got any thoughts or any questions?
No, just wondering, your PPT never changed during your conversation, so I'm not sure it's designed
Oh,
like that, or
okay. The slides didn't change.
yeah, it's
Okay.
always stay in the first page.
Okay. Well, we'll make sure that we send you out a copy of the slides afterwards, so that
Okay,
you've got those, and we'll normally do that anyway. But Chi, if you can make sure that happens, I'm not sure why that's not gone through. It's changing on my screen. But thank you for letting me know about that. But we'll definitely share the slides with you afterwards. Have
that's
you got
okay.
any other questions?
It's very good information. It just will be more easier to see bullet points, and rather than, because I couldn't see the PPT, that's related to why I couldn't
Yes, yes,
see
okay.
clearly.
Hopefully it'll be easier to understand when it's when you've got the presentation. But we'll also have a recording of the session, so
Yeah.
we'll check that afterwards, Peter. And if the slides don't move with it on the recording, then we'll re-record it, and those will be the recording. We'll send you a link. It'll be available on my YouTube page, because I have it there for people, so that's important. Just there are a couple of questions that I've been sent actually by other people, so I'll pick those up now. One of them was how to handle the disclosure of sensitive or confidential information during the SPA negotiation process. This comes up quite a lot because very often a competitor will kind of come in and they'll be looking to maybe asset strip you. So if you've got some really good IP or some sort of secret source, sometimes the competitors will want to know what that is. So it's really important to make sure that you have confidentiality when you go through this process. You have to be it's a tricky thing, because you obviously have to be as transparent as possible with your buyers, but you also need to protect your proprietary information and trade secrets until you actually sell your business. So that's where your solicitor comes in. So as an answer to that question, make sure that they develop a comprehensive NDA which is specific to you. We have NDAs on the Sales Success Circle, but this one will outline what information can be shared and how it is used. You have to set really clear boundaries up front on your NDAs to ensure that sensitive information is protected throughout the process until the sale itself. I had a really good example of that, and that's Maria, she sold her healthcare company to a larger industry player, a big pharma company. So she had a health tech company. And as part of the due diligence process, the buyer really wanted to access sensitive patient information and proprietary algorithms, which were critical to her company's success. She knew that she needed to be really transparent with and cooperative with her buyer, this pharma company, but she also was concerned about giving away sensitive data. So she got an NDA that clearly outlined the scope of the information that could be shared, and quite a lot of that was redacted to take away the actual patient information. And she also was very specific on the NDA about who within the buyer's team could actually access that information. So she took a really proactive and strategic approach to managing this sensitive information, which was essential because if the deal had collapsed, she would be in terrible trouble with potential data breaches if she'd shared sensitive information. So it's really important to think about that. Any other questions? Okay. I've mentioned a couple of times through the process about our Sales Success Circle. This is a membership community, and it's a way to help people who are overwhelmed with the sales process. Within the membership, we have a wealth of resources which will support through the whole process. But for the SPA, I've actually a couple of SPA examples that are on there, which really help to give a bit more clarity to this whole tricky process. And one's for a share purchase agreement, one's for an asset purchase agreement, depending on the way that you're selling your business. It also gives you a lot of checklists that we talked about today. But the main benefit of being part of this membership site is a community, and it's a community of people who are selling their businesses and people who've sold their businesses to give you that help and advice as you're going through. Alex did that. He joined. He was overwhelmed when it came to the SPA document because it's scary when you see it especially in paper format, and it's so many pages. So he connected with an experienced solicitor from our bank of solicitors we recommend, and they really helped to demystify the whole SPA process. And he also joined a couple of our weekly webinars to learn from other people who'd sold their business and realize that, you do go through pain when it comes through the SPA, the due diligence and the SPA process. It's really good to have a community around you. So I would say it's really good to consider joining, and we'll send more information out about that. There's also, if you're currently looking at your business and you're thinking about potentially selling or expanding, and you want to have a line in the sand as to where you are at the moment, I've got a fantastic valuation tool, and I can give you a free valuation, a really comprehensive valuation of your business, looking at every aspect of it. And I also create a nice report which actually shows you, gives you advice on all the areas of the business that you could tackle to improve that valuation. I'm currently working with a family who have inherited a business that's worth about 3 million. We've valued it at, they want to get that up to 9 million. So we've now got an action plan in place that we're working together on to improve the sales and profit of that business, so that they can hit their target before they go to exit. So what are the key takeaways for today? First and foremost, your SPA, whether it's a stock purchase, share purchase agreement or an asset purchase agreement, this is the one critical document that will govern the terms and conditions of your business sale. It's essential that you work with a good solicitor who is used to doing M&A, who can draft and negotiate the SPA that protects your interests and sets you up for successful closing and post-close transition. Remember, a lot of the times you won't sell your business straight off. You will be tied in some terms with deferred consideration or earnout. So it's really important to get somebody to work carefully on those terms to make sure that you get what you expect post-sale and you get the rest of the funds that you were expecting to receive. Some of the key components on your SPA, such as your purchase price and payment terms, representations and warranties, indemnification provisions, and any post-closing obligations or liabilities are all there, and they're important to get right. The other key point from today is it's all about collaborative working. The better the relationship you have with your buyer, the quicker and the less painful this whole process will be. It's really important to have that weekly communication or even daily communication, making sure that any concerns that you've got and any concerns that they've got are written down and they're answered. Very often it can be cyclical, and the same issues and problems can come back up again. So it's important that you have that on a spreadsheet, as far as I'm concerned, because that makes all the difference when it actually comes to speeding up that transition. So that's the SPA, and it's a lot of involvement. It's probably one of the more complex parts of your business sale, as well as the due diligence. It's important to get the right support, but remember, we've got a community that can help you with that as well. So well, I've run through the key insights. We do have on our membership group copies of all these checklists that I've talked through, example copies of the SPAs. As I mentioned, you can have a free strategy call with me, and I can also produce a free valuation and a business plan. I'm very passionate about this, having been involved in 70 it's over 70, I think it's about 73 business transactions. I'm really conscious that as a seller, you often only go through the process once, when many of your buyers have bought as many businesses as myself, and that's why I'm there to that's why I've set up the Sales Success Circle and the Master Plan. It's really important that you get to level up that playing field and have as much knowledge to make sure that you get the right sale when you go to sell your business, and sell it for the right price and sell it at the right time. So hope it's been useful today. Any other questions before we close?